Hello listeners, and welcome to 10 Hour Timestamp, the podcast which gives you 50p to call your mom and tell you won't be home tonight. I'm Stu the Brummie, friend of YouTube, Instagram and Twitter, and with me is Rose Tinted Spectrum, otherwise known as Rose Tinted Dave. Hello Dave.
Hiya.
If this is your first time listening, let me sum the premise up. Dave is a master gamer. He's capable of turning his hand to anything. I'm a mere amateur mortal who only plays beats 'em ups and point-and-click adventures. Ergo, I'm generally quite shit. So each month we have 10 hours to play through a game. Dave or I pick that game. It can be on any system, from any time period and any genre. So the possibilities, much like Dave's stockpile of videos to post, are endless. Dave, to the nearest 100, how many videos do you have ready to go out?
7 at the minute, but that's only because I haven't got to 8 yet.
Right. Well, I've put here, great answer.
It is a good answer.
It is a good answer. So after every hour we record how we're feeling, which generally in my case is pretty deflated. Then we get together, discuss our findings. But the big question is, will we continue to play the game after our allotted 10 hours? Will we reach the elusive 11th hour? Who effing knows? Do you know, Dave?
I do. I do. I just know.
You just know. I thought I'd put you on the spot there before our pre-scheduled banter. So, Dave, how are you? And have you been to the opticians this week?
I've not been to the opticians this week. I haven't been to the opticians since when we had that discussion last time. I said when I last went to the opticians was, and there hasn't been an update since then, Stu. There's been no opticians update, I'm afraid. I have been in my own house for an entire month now.
Oh,
because
you surely must have left for dog walking purposes.
No, I've been walking around the bedroom
with the dog, just in circles.
I don't even have her on the lead. I just carry her around
off the bed. Yeah, the dog is lockdown has put its toll on the dog's weight.
Yes. No, I've been doing the opposite of that. That was a complete lie.
The dog's been carrying you around the bedroom.
Yes. I've been doing quite long walks, and I've basically just been picking a random direction and seeing where I end up. And I ended up on some sort of beach, but it was like, I don't know if you're the same, but I feel like everyone in the UK is scared of quicksand. And the entire time I was walking along this beach, I was looking around and there was literally no one there. And I was thinking...
You were waiting to see like an arm or anything.
Yeah, I'm just going to go straight in. I'm going to go straight in this sand because quicksand is everywhere.
10 Hour Time.
Episode 1's been out for a week so far. Well, the feedback, I think, Dave, has been pretty decent. All 3 of you said you really enjoyed it. One of you was a little...
Sorry. I over-egged my laugh. Carry on.
That's fine. But one of you was a little disgruntled. It had nothing to do with stamps, time, or the number 10. So I can only apologise and suggest that you listen to the Royal Mail's podcast on their top 10 clocks. Hopefully that ticks and tocks all of your boxes. Did you enjoy that joke, Dave?
Oh, that was good. I did. Yeah. I do like stamp-related jokes.
Okay, so with the crap jokes and intro out the way, on to this month's game. The Commodore 64 version of the hit Saturday morning cartoon, Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. The Turtles, Raphael, Leonardo, Michelangelo and Donatello, who, as I'm sure you've already guessed, are named after strains of cannabis, have been trained in martial arts by Master Splinter, a man transformed into part rat after being in contact with the same ooze that turned the Turtles part human. For those not in the know, the British, famously scared of ninjas, renamed the American show Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles and cut out any ninja references like a Jared Leto Joker. Were you a Turtles fan growing up, Dave?
To the point where I once had a dream about being friends with them and woke up so depressed that it wasn't real that I tried to pull a sickie.
Did you really?
Yeah. It's quite a vivid memory of waking up in the morning and pretty much being in tears because I remember the end of the dream was me. I'd just come out of the sewer and I couldn't remember which sewer it was that the turtles were in, and I was just running around in this dream town looking for the correct sewer. And then I woke up and it wasn't real. But yeah, I was quite obsessed for a short while.
It's strange, isn't it? Like when you're younger, you get really, really obsessional dreams, and you wake up thoroughly distraught. I dreamt that I was dating Clarissa from Clarissa Explains It All.
Didn't we all?
And I woke up. I didn't we all? And I woke up, and like, God, I was in such a mood for like the rest of the day at school, and like it's quite difficult to explain to people. Well, I dreamt I was dating Clarissa from Clarissa Explains It All.
Back then, she was just known as Clarissa, though, because she was the only one on TV.
She was, yeah. She wasn't any Clarissa, yeah. So, as well as the C64, it was released for Amiga, Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, DOS, MSX, NES, and the ZX Spectrum. But I'm sure that's the last we'll ever have to talk about those versions again. Let's crack on with the first hour of Teenage Mutant Hero Ninja Turtles.
Okay, so hour one, and all I can say at this point really is for all the griping you did in the last episode about Alien Soldier, Stu, this is 10 times worse on every level. I think this may well end up being the longest 10 hours of my life. I suppose good things first, the intro music is pretty impressive. That's about all I've got. There is a lot of loading, too much loading. I'm emulating this, and even with warp speed on to bypass the loading, there's too much loading. If the game was amazing, then fair enough, I'd allow the loading, but the game isn't great. I hate it, and there's too much loading. Also, very bold of them to use a copy protection method on this game. Presumably it's there to stop people from getting into it illegally, but I'd also like to assume that it's there to just stop anyone from accessing it at all. Some more loading occurs before I finally get into the game, and then I'm in. Now, I remember briefly playing this game way back in the day, either on the Spectrum or the NES, or both. I remember they were pretty much the same. I was initially disappointed that it was absolutely not like the arcade version, which I loved, and it was this weird platforming game that seemed too difficult. When you suggested the game for this month, I thought, oh, well, that's good. I can go back to it with a fresh pair of eyes, see if perhaps my younger self didn't enjoy it simply because I was comparing it to something better. Little did I know that almost anything you compare it to would be better. I'm not sure I can highlight what happened during my playthrough because it all just sort of merged into one, but basically, there are a lot of enemies, most of which make absolutely no sense in context of the turtles, you know, the thing the game is based on. You start off walking around on a map, which is sort of like an overworld, only it's mostly pointless. The levels themselves are side-scrolling platformers that kind of want to be a bit like Ninja Gaiden, but nothing works. It's clunky as balls. A list of gripes then. Getting through doors on the overworld map is a crapshoot. Jumping between platforms is all over the shop, and half the time you have to jump through the corner of a platform instead of doing it like a normal sentient creature would. Enemies sometimes spawn on top of you as soon as you enter a level. Sometimes enemies just don't seem to die at all when you hit them. There's no way to hit anything without taking damage a lot of the time. It just feels incredibly sloppy, and that's in comparison to the NES version, which in itself is a pretty sloppy mess. There was one thing I liked though. The fight with Rocksteady is hilarious. Rocksteady, at least in the cartoons, is a big grey rhinoceros man with incredible strength. In this game, he is a big pink, half elephant, half rhinoceros man who skips gaily through the level, firing off his gun every now and then. To beat him, you basically just have to chase him while he skips and stick a sword up his arse. Honestly, this fight alone is hilarious, and I think the only thing I'm going to enjoy seeing again in hour 2. I'm not sure how far I got into the game. I got through the horrendous swimming areas, and then I got to a bit where I was just literally lost, and I ended up switching the game off in a tiz because I was just wandering around on an overhead map through a section where I couldn't even work out where I was supposed to be going. And then it spawned me into the wrong place on the map when it switched screens. So I had to do a level again just to get back to where I was, and I'm not even sure if that was where I was supposed to be. That's right, at the end of my first hour, I hadn't even died. I just switched the game off because I was disgusted with it.
10-hour timestamp.
Okay, hour 1, Teenage Mutant Ninja Hero Turtles. Heroes in a... Oh, forget it. So I played this when I was younger. I kind of had some idea about it, but I don't remember playing it for very long. I don't even know if I had it or whether somebody had it on the original Nintendo, on the NES. But anyway, yeah, so I got into it pretty much straight away. It's not massively difficult. I'm just finding... I'm not sure if it's the emulation of the game itself, but it's very glitchy. I keep getting stuck in things, and there are quite a few occasions where I need to jump up and left onto a ledge to be able to get out of a room. It just doesn't want to do it. It just keeps rolling up into a shell and then dropping back down, rolling into a shell, dropping back down. By that point, things have respawned and are trying to kill you. So that's not brilliant. It did take me the first half an hour to remember that I could hit enter to change what turtle I'm using. So that's great. I remembered that on the NES version, but for some reason I thought I didn't think the Commodore 64 had got the same thing implemented into it. I thought it was just a case of when your turtle died, you move on to the next one. But no, you hit enter. It would be incredibly funny if Dave went the full 10 hours without realising this, and I hope he does. I hope he doesn't realise that. For some small revenge from Alien Soldier, and Alien Soldier as well as Soldier, for the fact that I missed out on half the things that were going on there. But yeah, first hour, okay, got through to stage 3 or section 3 or whatever, and then there was a couple of multi-loads so far, and I've just died through exploration, really. I'm not taking it massively seriously at the moment. I'm just getting a feel of it, having a wander around, seeing where things are. But like I said, I don't know whether it's the game or the emulation, but especially in the turtle van, I can just get stuck on things. And at one point I accidentally drove into the river. I couldn't get out, and it was just death after death after death, and then it was game over. And yes, that's not making life incredibly easy for me. Other than that, it's been quite an enjoyable hour or so. I haven't hated it. It's just a bit of button mashing and walking around. Some very, very irritating sections where you will be loaded straight into loads of enemies coming at you from all angles, and if you don't know that you're going into that room and there's things in there, you'll get hit energy quite hard. So I have found that every time I enter a room now, I'm hitting the attack button just so in case something appears, I'm on it straight away. The multi-load is taking quite some time, which is fun and games. Bebop and Rocksteady were the first bosses. Bebop first, who just, it's pretty much impossible to get out of his way, and you just have to kind of keep spamming him. And then luckily there's a little house straight after that you can get a pizza to refill your life. And then Rocksteady or Bebop, whichever way around, is incredibly easy to kill. You literally just wander behind him and just keep hitting him, and then when he turns around, jump over him and then just keep hitting him. Then there's the water stage in stage 2, which is something I was absolutely dreading because I remember it being horrible. But I breezed through that. But first go, no issues at all with that. Straight through, within the time limit. I just made use of, alternating through turtles to get through it as one of their, energy level was getting low. So all in all, not a bad first hour.
I will not lie, I did love your entry. The fact that you were so upset was wonderful. It was very different because I was actually quite upbeat and you hated it.
Yeah, well, I think part of that is there's obviously a lot of nostalgia for you in this game because assuming you used to own it at some point.
Yeah, I think so.
My only experience of it was I must have either had like a demo of the Spectrum version or I played it on the NES. I know I've like picked up the NES version every now and then, just like on various emulators, but not way back when. So I didn't have a lot of experience with it from then. My thing from back then was the arcade Turtles and Turtles in Time on the SNES.
So how disappointed were you that it wasn't the arcade conversion?
Well, it's just a nothing. it's as I don't know. It's like I'm sure I've said this in multiple entries, but this game could be anything.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I will say, you did bring up at this point, because I don't mention this in any of the diary entries, not that I know of at least, but you did say there that I hope Dave never realises that you can switch Turtles. I don't think I realised that until about hour 8.
Really?
Yeah, so bear that in mind when listening to the rest of the entries.
Oh, I hate you.
I had no idea that was a thing. It took me until hour 2 to realise how you could get in the turtle van. I think in that first hour, I was looking at the turtle van and I was like pressing buttons on the joystick and I was like pressing keys. Nothing was working. So I was like, you know what? That's just set dressing. That van is just there as if, because you start off next to it as well. Why aren't you just in the van? You need to get in the van. So just I just thought, right, well, that's nothing. So I ended up wandering off and I was just walking around in these areas and I was going in levels, getting through the levels, which are a pain in the arse to get through anyway, getting through the levels and then maybe falling off, having to restart, go back through, falling off, go back. And then I kept hitting all these bollards. I was like, what the friggin' hell am I supposed to... But, like, there's gaps wide enough for a turtle to get through.
To just walk happily through them.
But no, you're not allowed to. So then I was like, oh, well, I don't know what... So I was like, so I started exploring about. And then... I can't remember. I mean, this is so long ago now. I did this hour 1. But something happened where I either died or I walked... like into a part of the screen and it put me somewhere like miles back to where I had been previously, which meant
really?
I would have had to do all of the stuff I'd done again to go and explore the area, which was a dead end anyway. I would have had to, and I was like, nah. So I was just like, I'm done. That was my hour done.
Glitching is a massive part of it, isn't it? Like even things like trying to enter doors on the overworld, you have to keep like repositioning your turtle absolutely perfectly so it actually goes through the door.
Yeah,
I don't know if you find that.
It's not even that half the time. It's slightly to the right of wherever you need to be, I found, because even like the holes and that you're supposed to drop down, if you come at them from the left, it's always slightly off. It's almost like the artwork is slightly to the left of where the actual coding event is. So it just isn't lined up correctly. But yeah, I mean, the amount of times that you just get stuck on walls and stuff is mad, really.
And jumping as well, just small little gaps, like trying to the amount of times where I've just got at the top and I just want to jump from one side to another, and you just can't do it. It's you kind of roll up and then drop, as I was saying. It's
certainly intriguing, because obviously it's a port from the NES version, and so far as I'm aware, this Commodore 64 version was either rushed or it's unfinished in some manner. They did release another version of it, which is apparently an improved version of the game. Apparently it fixes some of the issues. I'm not 100% if that's true.
Really?
Yes.
I know that there was... I'll probably come on to mention this later, but the Amiga and the MS-DOS versions were both broken, and you couldn't actually complete them because there was a section on the rooftop where you would get stuck. And the only way to complete it was to actually cheat.
Wow!
And that's a well-known issue with the Amiga and the MS-DOS version, that you can't actually complete them.
I mean, that's what I will say about the C64 version is that it is completable. So that is at least a bonus.
It is, yeah. Your money isn't completely wasted.
No, exactly. I mean, you would be so pissed off if you bought a game and it's like, well, this is actually impossible to get past.
So I've got to ask the question. At what hour do you think I complete it?
I'm gonna go. I mean, based on that, you were just kind of exploring the world and everything else. I'm gonna say hour 5.
Okay.
That's my guess. But I don't know.
Should we listen to hour 2?
Let's go for it.
Right, end of hour 2. No real progress, but that is because I've got to the bit with the turtle wagon and I'm unable to get inside and drive it. Now, I know this is a effing, I'm trying not to swear as much, effing glitchy game, but Jesus Christ. Like, I thought some of the jumping mechanics was bad enough, but I've tried every turtle to get in. I've gone off, buggered off, and I've done a few other, like, areas. Well, I've done, like, a sewer room that goes into a warehouse to get some turtles that look like they're skating and coming back down. Tried all the turtles, can't get in the van. Then I've just killed off all my turtles, tried again, doesn't work. Killed off all my turtles, tried again, doesn't work. So I'm a bit frustrated because I'm actually doing pretty well, that aside. The swimming level, I forgot what way to go the first time, but I remember the second time. Still pretty straightforward. Energy turtle-wise, easy enough. I'm getting good at just swapping turtles just before they die. And then when you get to another big pizza, which replenishes your health, then changing back to the pizza with turtle with low energy, and then topping their energy levels back up. So, like, playthrough-wise, absolutely fine. I've not died, apart from the water level, but that's because I went the wrong way. But it's just completely bollocksed up my playthrough of my second hour. You know, you may be thinking, well, you haven't got very far considering it's an hour. I mean, it is playing on the C64, so there is some loading time. But yeah, it's so frustrating. I mean, the game's just... I mean, let's be honest, the game's pretty crap and pretty boring. And it doesn't help that you are just randomly taken into rooms where you just fight people and they just appear, which is really frustrating. Yeah, just really quite crap overall. Again, not sure if it's the emulation. I mean, I've got an original C64 which I could try out, but one, I'll be sat here for ages with the loading screens, and two, I don't have a compatible controller since I sold my Mega Drive, so that's cocked that up. So all in all, first hour, no progress at all due to this bloody wagon glitch. So I'm going to try again tonight. I have used a save state, but the only reason I've used that is to save right at the start of the very first level, because there's 2 lots of loading screens, and then you have to then input a copyright protection passcode. I've literally just done that just to bypass those screens and get me straight to the start. So yeah, fine, absolutely fine playthrough-wise. I'm finding it easy, just that bloody wagons roll, or not in this case.
So that's hour 2 done. Let me just come straight out and say it. I hate this. I hate this mostly because it's just a mediocre mess. It is buggy and stupid and rubbish. I hate it. I hate it because I can't even truly, fully, deeply hate it. There is an almost nothingness to it. If it didn't have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles attached to it, this game would not be remembered by anyone. Anyway, this playthrough, I got back to where I got to before in double quick time, and I did that by avoiding pretty much everything the game has to offer, because let me be real here, the game does not offer much, but what it does provide you with is a lot of ways to get dead-ended. Normally, it provides you with a full health power-up to appease your wasted time, but this does not appease me. This does not appease me at all. It just makes me more annoyed. I read through the manual before I played this hour, and I realised there were a couple of keyboard controls I'd missed last time. Shift key, for instance, allows you to get inside the turtle van. This should have been an exciting experience, but much like everything else in the game, it is merely another pointless thing you can do for no particular gain. The only thing the truck allows you to do is fire missiles, which you need to go and collect from a random house. Once you have the missiles, you can then toddle off in your van and shoot some bollards. That's as exciting as driving the van gets. You shoot bollards with missiles. Just to really ramp up the excitement, the van moves faster than the missiles, and the van doesn't move any faster than a turtle on foot. This game. Before that, though, the first time I get in the van, I literally get stuck. The van won't move. I have to keep getting in and out of the van until it dislodges itself from the pavement. This seems to be a common theme in the game. Your collision detection is all over the shop. Be it going through doors, jumping on platforms, or anything. It's a fucking mess. The next areas all pass me by like some sort of monotonous dream. In one chapter, I literally just drove the van around for a bit, and that seemed to be all the chapter had to offer before I was hit with another loading screen. No enemies, no action, just moving a van in 4 cardinal directions. I honestly think I may have fallen asleep through some of it.
One thing that did wake me up, just so I could continuously let out a stream of sighs, was the sewer section, where falling off puts you back on the map screen. So you have to enter the level again, if you can get through the door, and if you fall off again, you go back to the map screen. After a while, I seemed to rescue Splinter from a silver turtle who just ran around doing nothing. He was effectively doing the exact same attack pattern as the pink elephant rhinoceros from earlier, who I will admit did put a smile on my face just the once in this entire hour. The thing is, Rocksteady had a gun, so at least he was firing. This guy does nout. I'm not even sure who he's supposed to be. The game continues in a humdrum fashion from that point on. Overworld map, platforming levels, overworld map, platforming levels. It's all a horrible maze of just trying to work out where you're supposed to go, but I crack the code fairly early on. If there are, for example, 3 exits on the overworld map, you want the one that's furthest away. Anything else will just lead to a dead end. Soon enough, I seem to be in the Shredder Dome, or whatever the fuck it's called, and I'm fighting big bouncing emus, but honestly, I can't even be asked to question it anymore. I lose a load of lives to a corridor full of floating spacemen, until, much like the rest of the game, I just decided to ignore the damage and run through them. Eventually, I'm put in a room with a guy who looks exactly like Appleman from the Banana Man comics. I mean, literally, he just looks exactly like him. At first, I had no clue who he was supposed to be, until I killed him. And the game ended. The game has ended, Stu. I'm 2 hours in, and I've completed the game. Appleman wasn't Appleman. He was apparently Shredder, and I've completed the game, and I'm 2 hours in. So, unbeknownst to Stu, I had to sneakily ask him what we'd do in a situation like this, and we agreed that the best option would be for each person to make an executive decision in secret about how they should fill in the rest of their hours. We don't talk to each other about how we've got on with the games until the podcast itself, so I had to pretend I was bringing up a hypothetical situation, but no, Stu, this is why I was asking that question. So, for hour 3, I guess I'm going to take a look at the NES version of the game, and I'm going to compare it to this absolutely hollow basket of shite.
10-hour time.
That's hugely embarrassing for me, isn't it?
To be fair, though, your issues with the van sound a lot similar to the same issues I was having with the van in that section, although you just couldn't get in it by the looks of it.
No. But I was far too chuffed for my own good in the last two entries. Going, God, I'm really good at this. God, this is so easy. Isn't this really easy to play? When I listened to listeners of your one, then I was contemplating lying about how far I'd got and like just editing all my things together. Like, yeah, I completed it. Yeah, same one as you.
It was easy.
But yeah, it came as no surprise to me that you'd already finished it, and through your line of questioning on Discord, I'm not an idiot. I had figured out that you'd probably have completed it by then.
Well, I mean, to people listening, the way that I put it forward, I was like, well, Stu, so what happens if we play it at like a point-and-click adventure game, for instance? That may only have 6 hours of content. What would we do in a situation like that? And I was like, I didn't want to just say like, Stu, what the fuck? I've completed this. What do we do now? So I tried to put it forward as a hypothetical. I was worried that it may have been slightly obvious, but it did lead to some interesting new entries. But the idea behind it was, okay, I mean, it's 10 hours that you're supposed to put within the game. So if you're gonna do something like this, then you can try different ways attempting the game, which I do. later on. But
Definitely do.
But I also wanted to look at the things, basically anything that was related to this game. And so a lot of my entries later on are essentially the different ports of the game to see how they stack up against this. Because really, in that 2 hours, I had seen pretty much everything the game had to offer. And it was not to my liking.
I've watched videos of people speedrun it on YouTube in like 25 minutes, and they are literally, if you just go straight to the end, furthest point, like you said, you can finish it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to go into like half of what's available to you. I mean, if you there are quite a lot of the little factories or whatever it is that you can go into later on in the game when you're on like that. I don't know I couldn't figure out what it was. It looked like a construction site.
Well, you're kind of like an airport, and also it's a construction site. It's a very confusing mess. It's like level 3 or mission 3 or something like that.
Yeah, and there are a lot of sewers that you can go down into that are all interlinked and blah, blah, blah. So I can understand how you could take a long time.
Try and work out where to go, etc. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the issue with it is that it's not a 1.1 port of the NES version. So the NES version it has a lot more to it than this, and I mean, just off the top of my head, you're missing like the kind of mini boss battles at the end of each of the platforming sections. But the biggest one that you're missing is 99% of the power-ups that gave the game a bit more, I guess, free will and variety here. But also, you need those power-ups to get through certain sections in the NES version of the game. I mean, you can kind of fudge your way through, but ideally, you want to be going to explore these houses to get the special weapons to go and get through the main areas. In this, you don't need to do any of that.
There's no need at all.
But half the time, the weapons aren't even there anyway. They just scrubbed them from the entire game. So,
and I'm super impressed that you completed it without knowing that you could change turtle as well.
Well, yeah, it was just. I mean, essentially, I found out that if you were attacking stuff, if you kept on like just hitting the attack button, half the time they wouldn't even die, and you would just take a load of damage, and so you would do just as well by avoiding 90% of the enemies, which is what I ended up doing, and to an extreme.
There's one enemy that you hit, and he just kind of crouches, and he puts his hands over his head.
The Sandman kind of thing. I think that's what he is in the NES version.
Yeah, and you can eventually kill him. For me, there were a lot of enemies in the game, but we will come on to that. Did you get any kind of sense of achievement or anything from completing it, or was it relief more than?
Not really, because it wasn't. There was no. It's a strange one. I don't like. Obviously, I don't know how long it's taken you to complete this. I don't want to say there was no sense of challenge, because that could be absolutely pissing on your chips. However, it was I don't know, it doesn't feel like any part of it holds together in a way that is enjoyable. That is like, it's a really harsh statement, but I'm not a big fan of the game that it's been ported from. And so if you take like what is to me a mediocre game and then you port it and remove a lot of the elements because it won't work, have a worse control scheme, glitch constantly, and then realize that you have made something that isn't very good and make it incredibly easy in comparison. Because I mean, just as an example of like the easiness comparisons, you get like 4 or 5 continues or something just straight off the bat. It doesn't seem to give you in the NES version, you basically, if one of your turtles dies, the only way to get them back is again to go exploring. You find the turtle like essentially an extra life, but you find them tied up, you rescue them, etc. All of that is missing. They were just like, well, I mean, it's hard to code games, so if we just give them 4 continues and take all of that stuff out, but that's where the variety, that's where the kind of the interest comes from.
the challenge as
They
well.
just took out so much, and the only thing they gave me was a homosexual rocksteady who skipped along and absolutely made my day. And that was every time I went back and played it. As soon as Rocksteady came on, I had a big smile on my face for about a minute, and that was.
I mean, effectively, it's a watered-down version of a watered-down game already, and it doesn't leave a great deal to any of the original games.
It's weird. It's like when somebody takes a picture of the internet and it gets photoshopped and then screenshotted and then passed around so many times that it's just like deep fried. It's a deep fried version of the NES game.
I've split these up, so here's my third hour. Right, end of hour. What is this? Hour, I think it's 3. Played well. I realised that I wasn't able to get into the Turtles wagon because I've got the caps lock on. And as you need to use shift to get in and out the wagon, if you have the caps lock on, it pretty much stops you from getting in and out, which is the issue I was having yesterday, where I literally just walked up to the wagon and I managed to get into it and blah, 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 blah. Doing good. I've died once so far. I'm on my second continue. Some really irritating sections where you've still got the whole go up a ladder and then there's some enemies there for you to fight straight away, which is a bit crap. Horrible mechanic. When you go onto a roof, if you should happen to accidentally press left, you'll drop back down the ladder that you just go onto the roof on, rather than just letting you carry on walking across the roof, which is really frustrating. I don't know why, I did it like 3 times in a row, but that was a bit stupid. And there's one section where you have to go all the way through a building to then go down into the sewers, where it's quite tricky. You've got a lot of little platforming sections to do, and if you should fall into the water at any point, then you will go straight back to the start of the warehouse bit. Although I didn't die at any point during that, it was a bit effing frustrating having to keep constantly going back to the start of the warehouse just to do that one jumping section. So not too bad. Had a third boss now, which is a white turtle. Starts off black, you hit him, then he turns white, and then he literally just does a very laborious jump back and forth, so it's quite easy for you to just stand there, pummel him, then move across as he jumps, turn back, hit him, keep going. One section after the multi-load starts immediately with a little eye thing dropping down and walking over you, which considering I was using fast load, like I was looking down at my phone and then looked up, and all of a sudden I was just being constantly hit by this one eye, which luckily I managed to kill before it completely destroyed me. So yeah, not too bad. A few seeding, a few bits, yeah. So it's okay. It's not the most interesting game in the world. It is literally just walk left, right, shoot, hit things and jump, but not in a particularly interesting way. There's some really frustrating bosses. I keep saying bosses. There's some really frustrating enemies that when you hit them, they turn into like little men who just run back and forth, who are just pointless. I actually think the array of enemies, I think there's too many of them. There's too many different kinds, and it feels like they were trying to fill a quota. So that's a bit annoying. It's like, you don't need this many different kind of bosses. Enemies, not effing bosses. So yeah, so I've just paused this after defeating the evil turtle. I've saved Splinter. I've paused on the load screen. So let's see where we go. Yes, so...
Sounds like you're having trouble with the bosses there, Stu.
Yeah, I'm having trouble talking bloody 20% of the time. But yeah, so as you can tell, I was still not doing brilliantly. I think my problem is like the more bored I get of a game, I just start playing worse and worse because like my concentration just isn't there. I'm just like my eyes are wandering. I'm just thinking about other stuff.
I was going to say it's interesting to see that how quick of a difference it's been from hour one, where you were, oh yeah, I remember this, quite good, and then hour two you said it's crap and boring. Hour three you're like, just carrying on playing, get a bit further.
But yeah, I think it's because all the things that were frustrating were just getting when you're having to do them again and again and again. That's the sewer bit where you drop into the water and then it takes you back to the map. On one of the glitches on the Amiga version was on one of the sewers, the gap was actually too big for you to be able to jump.
Oh, right, okay.
So it was impossible for you to jump across it.
I think I've heard about that, yeah.
So they ended up having to release like a patched version of it, but there are a lot of very crap mechanics in there that just do not work. And the amount of enemies, do you think there were far too many varieties of enemies?
I don't know, because I avoided most of them.
Well, yeah.
Just walk past them. But yeah, I know what you mean. There's a lot of different types of enemies. There's not a great deal of different mechanics in them. There's just some that are annoying to fight. Like as you mentioned with the Sandman before, he kind of ducks down and you can't really do damage to him when he's ducked down, so you got to wait for him to get back up, hit him again, he goes down, you wait for him to get back up. And then there's the guy who's on fire, who throws fireball things knocking about, and there's the man who splits into little men. But in regards to the rest of them, honestly, I mean, none of them are particularly memorable outside of those three, and the only reason they're memorable is because they're really annoying. So it's not doing it a great deal of favors. I did like the way you were also confused though by the silver turtle guy. Apparently that's a mecha turtle.
Yeah, there is a mecha turtle in the cartoon, isn't there? But I don't remember whether he was a villain or a good.
I mean, I didn't recognize him. I'd only been reading about it before, and I was like, oh yes, I kind of remember there was a mecha turtle. I don't. This is the thing. A lot of people say that the game takes a lot of inspiration from the comics. I know that certainly the artwork that was on the original NES release was from.
They all had red bandanas.
So that was from. That was obviously artwork from the comic. When it got ported over to the C64, they seem to have used the cartoon. I'm guessing because it probably would have sold more, let's be honest, if it had the cartoon on there. But everyone was like, oh, well, that's why it doesn't have Krang in it, because it's based on the cartoon and the comic and not the cartoon. But it's got Bebop and Rocksteady in it, who weren't in the comic. They were only in the cartoon.
And the Thunderdome as well, wasn't that was Krang's
yes,
lair?
It was.
Wasn't it? The
and then he just didn't bother showing. And again, in the NES version, there's two other big fights in there. There's a giant mouser that you have to fight, and there's also the Technodrome, which you literally hit with your weapons as if that's going to do any damage. But those just got wiped out of the C64 version. So you basically get the rubbish drop down and avoid the closing wall. And then you're inside the Technodrome, where I have no idea what half of the enemies are supposed to be. Like in the Technodrome, there's just giant bouncing robot birds.
Yeah, the emus, the weird looking emu things. I don't like it. It was like they'd got like somebody had come in with like they're like the flash books when you go and have a tattoo, like where you go oh yeah, not that I've ever done that, but there's the book. Somebody's obviously come in with like a book of sprites,
that one,
and gone right, yeah, exactly, yeah. Oh, we're making a turtles game. Oh, an emu. They're a bit like turtles, aren't they? But it doesn't make any sense.
And why are emus harder to kill than foot soldiers? Foot soldiers are going to be like highly trained ninjas.
And they're barely in it. The foot soldiers aren't in it that much comparatively, considering how much of a big thing
they're on the Overworld, and I think Overworld has foot soldiers and steamrollers, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's literally all you get.
Homing steamrollers.
Yes.
Rightio. Well, let's hear how you did on the NES version.
10 hour time down.
So onto the NES version then. I'm lulled into a false sense of security at first. It looks incredibly similar to the C64 version, but in this version I get instantly run over by a steamroller. I definitely won't fall for that again. Oh no, I've just been run over by a steamroller again. Okay, a quick restart because that was definitely just a practice go. Things do start to get better, and I realise that the steamrollers are probably a good moving analogy for how Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the NES plays. To wit, it likes to steamroll you with damage. Certainly a lot more than the C64 version did. There are end-of-level bosses constantly here. Death normally requires completing an entire level again from scratch, and certainly later in the game, I'm looking at you, Underwater Level, the difficulty has been ramped up by a decent margin. That all being said though, the difference in how it plays is night and day. I still don't particularly like the game, but if the C64 version was a 3 out of 10, this is a 4.5 maybe. It's still a bare average platform game with fighty bits and a rudimentary license applied, but in this version things actually work as they should. Jumping is better, even if it is still sloppy. The fighting mechanics are better, the graphics aren't as muddy. There's a discernible difference between each of the turtles. The bosses aren't as sloppily thrown together. The special weapons are actually a viable alternative, and just a note here, I don't think I used a special weapon once in the C64 version because I barely ever found one. Overall, this feels like the game I can imagine some people having a soft spot for, but not for me. It's a game where taking damage is just an inevitability, and I hate that in games. There's shit coming at you from all angles. Overall, I got stuck at the underwater section for ages, and then I got to the van driving segment and I got lost. I drove around for ages and then I got bored. The layout seems different to the C64 version, but then again, I seem to have just completed the C64 version by accident and aimless wandering around. Just the way all excellent games are played. Right, well, ZX Spectrum version next, I reckon.
Right. Were there even special weapons in the C64 version? Because I don't recall ever coming across them. There's the rope where you can go across the ceilings, across the rooftops. There's the missiles for the van.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure that's about it.
Do you count pizza as a special weapon? I don't think there were any like throwable weapons, which is what 90% of the NES ones are. I think they were completely missing from the game. The enemies certainly don't drop them, and I didn't explore enough of the world to check if they were hidden somewhere. But why would they? If they were implemented in the game, why would they hide them away? And
well, the NES version, they you get them quite early on in the game.
They piss special weapons at you constantly. Like literally every 10th enemy down, there's like a special weapon farts out of the face. So it's madness. I mean, surely it wouldn't have taken that much to implement just a throwable weapon. It's baffling to me that they removed that particular element, and I can only assume like they were in a rush to get it over Christmas or something.
Well, funnily enough, the main version I remember, the Nintendo version of this game, is because it was the packing game with the Nintendo the year I wanted a NES for Christmas, but I got a Commodore 64 instead.
Right, okay.
So yeah, not that I'm bitter. At this point, would you say you enjoyed it more or less than the Commodore version? And then my computer died, and we had to sit about hoping that we hadn't lost an hour's worth of recording. Luckily for us, we didn't. So, let's get on with it.
So basically, before the apocalyptic event, where everything crashed, essentially what I was saying was that the NES version, I get it, it's fine, but it does just feel like if it was a game with any other theme over the top, it wouldn't be remembered in the same way that it is now. That's my takeaway from it, at least. But yeah, the NES version is fine, and I'm sure it's a game that I'll just pick up every now and then to try it out, and I'll go, I don't know why I'm playing this. I don't really like it.
Oh, well, let's just hang fire for chatting about the NES version. Let's listen to me smash hour number 4. Hour 4. My run of good luck is over. So once you save Splinter, you go into this really strange area, which is like an industrial work site. Loads and loads of manholes, and there's like 2 or 3 in every kind of little area. You have to kind of figure out exactly where you're going and figure out a path. I think I fluked it most of the way. And then there were a couple of points where I was like, oh no, hang on, I'm coming back on myself here. That was okay. There's an awful lot of quick loading between every few screens. And then there's an area where there's, again, too many enemies. Like there's kangaroos and stuff. But when I kind of finally got where I think I was supposed to, well, I was heading the right way, I know I was. There's lots of areas where you kind of, there's dead ends and you realise that you have to drop down holes instead of going down ladders and things. I think I got to the end of that stage, like combined, because I ended up fighting a boss, but I was down to the last bit of health with my last turtle, and he literally just dropped and killed me. But there was a big area before that where there's loads of blue men that look like they're sat typing at an invisible typewriter that keep coming backwards and forwards, and you have to go through like a whole corridor of those before you get to like another kangaroo, and then I got to the boss and then died. So that's my playthrough.
10-hour time stamp.
I mean, first of all, the more I talk, the more it sounds like I'm playing Dark Souls or some incredibly huge RPG rather than this tiny little Commodore game. Have you figured out where I've got up
you
to,
just
Dave?
entered the Technodrome, otherwise known as the Shredder Palace. I think
That's right.
What I called it. Yes. Yeah, so you're coming into the end zone at least, and to be fair, that the Technodrome is the only area that it starts to get difficult, mainly because most things are unavoidable. I've found, and it's a random maze of things.
Yeah, it is really random. Well, I've actually got to Appleman Shredder Man.
Oh right, okay.
And that's where I died.
No, I didn't realise that was how far you got. I noticed you'd mentioned the emus. That was why I thought you'd just hit the Technodrome.
Yeah, well, it's the do you know the blue men that look like they're on typewriters that just go up and down in that long corridor? Yes. They're weird. Yeah. Absolutely
They're
weird.
Almost impossible to kill as well.
Yes, they are, yeah. Which is where being able to switch turtles is very useful, and you still managed to do it without switching turtles.
Yeah, well, all I did, because I still had like 2 continues left by that point, so I just ran through them. It's like, didn't matter how much health I had left, just la-di-da-di-da. Because this is another big difference, certainly with the difficulty in terms of the original port and this one, is that when you die, you respawn in exactly the same place that you were. Unless it's a continue, you just go pop and you just pop back in again. In the NES, you would have to redo that entire section again. So it doesn't take much to figure out that, well, I'll just run through it. I don't like this. Let's just get through.
So I'm on the winning streak. I think we'll have to say, but we'll put me on hold for a moment to see how you did on the Spectrum.
So, I tried the ZX Spectrum version. One thing I will say is that it's super impressive. Not in how it plays, it still plays like shit, but graphically, it could well be one of the nicest looking Spectrum games I've ever come across. That being said, the phrase NES hard, referring to how difficult the original Nintendo System's games were, has always made me laugh because it completely pales in comparison to Spectrum hard. Mostly, granted, that's because Spectrum games handle like a slimy turd, but still, TMNT on the ZX Spectrum is balls to the wall hard. No continues available, so that's a thing. First I died at Bebop, which I didn't do in either of the previous 2 games, and when I say died, died, I mean I lost all 4 turtles. Then I died at Rocksteady. And the reason for this is because on the Spectrum versions, they are not Bebop and Rocksteady. They are sentient blob-shaped ghosts who follow you endlessly throughout the entire level until you die. When you jump, they do not jump. They fly through the air with horrific grace and home in on you. You have to punch, run, and hope they don't actually land on you, because if you do, your health is gone. Weirdly, the combat in this game is better than the C64 version, but it also sort of isn't. It's weird. The feeling of using your weapons in the C64 version is better, because in the Spectrum version it just goes and a little weapon flashes up in front of you. However, when you hit something with it, it feels miles better than the C64 port. For a start, everything explodes in balls of fire, and there's just a much more direct feeling to it. It's closer to how the NES version feels, whereas the C64 feels like you're sitting on your hand until it goes numb, and then waving a sheet of paper at the enemies in the hopes they get a paper cut. It's shit. It's proper shit. And I know this because after my Spectrum jaunt, I went back to the C64 version. I hate it. I hate everything about it, Stu. Once again, I switched it off partway through, not because I died, but because I'd gotten lost and I just couldn't be arsed. I'm starting to wonder, though, if I can spice things up for myself. For Hour 5, I'm going to attempt to get as far as possible through the game without actually hitting anything with a weapon, apart from the bosses, which you have to attack, but everything else, I'm just going to see if I can avoid them completely. I'm literally having to invent my own fun at this point.
10-hour time stamp.
Okie dokie. So, the Spectrum version is the version that I remember quite well. It wasn't until that I watched it being played that I was like, yeah, because a friend of mine had a Sam Coupe.
Yes.
And they pretty much emulated the Spectrum, and so they used to play loads of Spectrum games. And I remember playing the Spectrum version of this on that, and I really, really liked the chunky sprites, and I really liked the explosions. I think, like you say, graphically, it's a really pretty game, and I do like the little explosions. But I mean, other than that, is there nothing about the Spectrum version that you preferred?
In the way it controls, it controls a lot better than the C64 version. My issue with it was mainly in the way that the bosses worked. Like, they just home in. I mean, they're obviously at the point where it's like, well, none of these enemies like fire a projectile, and we can't make it too easy. So if an enemy is what causes the player to lose health, what does the enemy need to do in order to make that player lose health as quickly as possible? And that is to just follow him no matter where he goes. So, like, you'll jump in the air and you'll... for those who haven't played the game, you jump in the air and you kind of hover in the air for a bit before you come back down. You spin in a ball. Yeah. But in this game, they, like Bebop and Rocksteady certainly, because this is pretty much all I ever saw of it, they... In the C64 and the NES version, which the C64 version is closer to the NES version in this case, they have like a set pattern that they go through, so you can actually avoid them. You can stand in certain places, or you can just, jab them in the back or whatever. In this, they just do not stop coming after you. See, when you jump in the air, they jump, but they don't jump really. They just move into the air. As if they're on, as if you're looking down on them instead of on a 2D plane. They don't control, actual physical things. They control, something that is just literally there to remove your health from you. And I think the only way I could get past it was just standing there and just jamming the attack button as fast as possible until I eventually got past. But then by the time I got to the next one, Bebop, is it? Yeah, Rocksteady, whichever one. Rocksteady, the big dancing pink guy from the C64, which still makes me laugh. That guy, once you get back to him, I'd run out of continues, because again, this game, the Spectrum port follows the NES one a bit closer in that respect, where you don't just get 4 continues to carry on. You have to actually do well at the game in order to succeed.
They did a really good job with the actual main screen with the little turtles on the side, and it's very pretty. But again, apart from the chunky sprites and the explosions, there isn't a great
No.
detail,
I mean,
really.
it's a case of, okay, so the NES version is like what? Like let's round it up to 5. The Spectrum version is a 4, and the C64 version is a 3. It's not great stakes between them all. I prefer the attacking. So yeah, the attacks in the Spectrum version, they're instant. It's the one thing that really irritated me with the C64 version is you can hit stuff like 5 times and it doesn't seem to do anything.
There's no tactile response. It's you know, like you say, it's just floppy and flouncy, and then finally they die, and you're like, how did that even happen?
And I think it is a case of if you keep hitting the attack button, it doesn't do damage to them. I think you have to kind of do one and then wait a bit and then do another attack. If you just keep jabbing it, this is from what I've read from people banging on the internet,
banging bloody on about this game.
Yeah. They all say if you keep hitting the attack button, it doesn't register half the attacks.
Oh, okay. So there's obviously like a hit window that you can only have. Well, talking of hit windows, let's go straight onto your 5th hour. See how you did on the no-hit playthrough.
Back on the C64 version, and this time I decided to not press the attack button a single time, unless required to do so, for instance killing the bosses so I could progress, and shooting missiles from the shaggin' wagon. How far did I get? I got all the way up to the tunnels that lead into the Technodrome. That is about 85% of the game, completely achievable by simply walking through enemies or jumping over them. All you need to know is the correct way to go and the right amount of jump you need. The only area I had issue with was a section in the sewers where getting hit by bomb-dropping robots ends up punting you to the left or right. If they do that, it usually shoves you in the water and you have to start the area again. To combat it, I strategically died while stood on a platform so that I could rush it through the next hurdle. That was the only area in the entire game that gave me any real grief. It's honestly pretty astounding at this point that a game could be sold in the state that it's currently in. Also, if Stu hasn't completed the game by this point, then I am baffled as to what he could be doing with his life. Well, Hour 6 coming up. Apparently, this game was also released on the Amiga, Amstrad, Atari, MS-DOS, and MSX. I wonder if any of those versions are worse than this. Is it even possible? I don't know. There's also a Game Boy game, but I'm not sure if it's a totally different game or not. Honestly, if it's a totally different game, that might actually be better for my sanity. Also, Stu, I hate you.
Well, I never. What have I been doing with my life? Drinking, mainly. But it is amazing how far you managed to get without hitting it.
Yeah, I was pretty astounded myself. I didn't actually expect to get anywhere near that far, but yeah, just as you're going down in those tunnels, actually just before you get into those tunnel sections where you have the walls closing in from the left and the right.
Yeah.
I managed to get to that point, and then I died. And I think if I tried it again, I may be able to get more. I mean, it's kind of like rolling the dice. And
you are pretty close to the end of the game there.
Yeah, it's stupid. Let's be honest. But this is one of the things that made me laugh, though, because when I was like rewatching quite a few clips after the fact of the TMNT for the NES and the C64, and I'm watching other people play it. One of the things that you realise is, certainly if you think to the video that made this game more famous than anything else, which was the AVGN video on the NES version of the game, one of the biggest jokes in that game is the section where he has to try and jump across a platform that is like with a ceiling above him.
Yeah,
and he's trying and trying. Eventually he says like, "Oh, you just walk over it. You just walk over it." That is the joke in that game. However, In the C64 version, it's not even that. Because if you try and jump over it, it doesn't work. If you try and walk over it, it doesn't work. You have to jump from below up through the platform and to the left. If you want to do it with it, I mean, you may be able to do it another way, but that was the easiest way that I found. So you cut out 90% of the level. Because you basically you get through like the bottom part of the building, because you have to go in this building to get the missiles for the turtle van to move further on. So
yeah, that's right.
Like where the missiles are, you just jump straight up. So this section in the NES version, you can't jump that high. In the C64 version, you can jump slightly higher than in the NES version. So instead of doing all of the bits that he got so pissed off at in that level and trying to jump up, no, you just ignore everything and jump straight up and get it. It's absolutely mad that the game has just been reduced down to, okay, so the one of the most famous sections,
famously difficult sections,
is boiled down to just jumping straight up as soon as you enter the level.
I have to ask, will I complete it on this go?
I mean, you got to Captain Appleman, so I reckon. Oh, I don't know now. Because you've asked the question, which makes me think that maybe you didn't, but then surely you did. I can't imagine that you would have been struggling with Shredder for this long, unless you didn't get back there again. No, I'm going to change it to Hour 6. If Stu hasn't completed the game by this point, then I am baffled as to what he could be doing with his life.
10-hour time down.
Yo. At the end of hour 5 now, I'm pretty close to where I was yesterday when I died. I've lost one continue, so I'm just got 2 more to go. I'm hoping I can get through to where I was yesterday. Nothing to add really. I'm almost doing it on autopilot because I know it all. I know the layouts all pretty well. I'm onwards and upwards.
Right, at this point, I was writing the script and I was like, I honestly have nothing to say by this point other than I'm sorry.
I do like the very British attitude as well. Onwards and upwards.
I mean, I was under no illusions that you were forging forward, that you probably played every single version going. But I was trying to stay positive, and obviously after you sent the message going, by the way, if we should happen to complete a game, what should we do? And like in my head I was going, oh Jesus, it's hour 5 and I've still not completed it yet.
It's really a case of something that I said in that second hour, where if you work out that the game is essentially 90% filler, 10% the correct direction to go in, and you don't really need an awful lot of skill to get through it. You just, as shown there, you don't even have to hit anything. You can just walk through most of the level, jump over things. If you factor in the ability to be able to hit those dropping robots that turn up on that annoying sewer section, which we've mentioned a few times, because if you fall off that, you've got to do the entire sewer section again, which is just a pain in the arse and drains your energy. If you can get rid of them, that's like the only challenge up until you get to the final boss again. It's mad. Honestly, it's absolutely baffled me, this game, how it got released in the state that it's in.
I mean, the frustrating part is I could pretty much hammer through to the last part of the game on autopilot, but I just kept on dying. I don't know what it is. Well, I don't know what it is. I'm generally quite shit, but I mean, two very comparison wise, two very, very different.
Yeah, well, I guess it's totally dependent on how you're playing the game, though. If you haven't cottoned on to the fact that, actually most of this is pointless, and you're trying to...
No, I haven't.
Right, okay. Then you've no excuse.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I have absolutely no excuse, because I just did the same kind of playthrough method as you, as in I just went for kind of path of least resistance straight to the end of each level. But every time I got to like the Thunderdome, I couldn't do it. Like it was driving me mad.
The Thunderdome, it does like ramp the difficulty up a fairly decent amount, to be honest. Like the enemies do a lot more damage. The sections,
You don't have to humour me. Dan.
no, but like when I was doing my run throughs, even on that last one that I did there with the no attacks, most of my continues lost would have been in that final section, because enemies do just to absolutely sap the health out of you. They've got awkward movement patterns.
And there's a lot of jumping and bouncing
Yes.
enemies, which are quite difficult to avoid. Right, have you got anything to add, or should we move on to your
Nout.
note? Right, here's Dave on the Amiga.
So I went with the Amiga version, and well, I want to say that this is the best looking version, but there's definitely caveats to that. The intro artwork, this artwork looks like a 13-year-old's rendition of the Turtles drawn from memory. It's so weird. I can smell the Crayolas, and that kind of seeps over into the game itself. Technically, it's probably the best looking version of the game, but something about it is just so jarringly bright. I think the actual character design is fine, but the use of colors and the animations are a little out of tune, and certainly nothing like the other versions. At least you can make out what the enemies are. One last thing on the graphics though, April O'Neil is grey. I think she may actually be dead, like a walking corpse barking orders at you. I have no idea why all of the other colours are so bright, but they've painted April grey. In the words of a famous internet person who put plenty of time into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, what were they thinking? Other than that, difficulty is about on par with the NES version, but the controls are somewhere between Spectrum and NES. I think this is mostly due to the animation. Once again, it's practically impossible to get anywhere without taking damage, and the enemies often take multiple hits, but instead of being a little stab animation like the Spectrum, it's the full weapon animation from the NES. Some of the level layouts are totally different too. The underwater area is nothing like the other versions, and it's actually slightly easier, even if it is more random, because the laser guns don't seem to go off at a set time. They just fire whenever they can be asked. Overall, I played 3 times, and each time died somewhere in the first van section. There's no continues on this version, so completing it is going to be somewhere close to impossible. Luckily for me, I don't want to complete it because it's just as shit as all the other versions.
Did the Amiga version feel anything like a complete game for you?
You know what it felt like? I don't know if you ever remember Click and Play on the PC. It was like a make your own games thing.
Oh,
It kind of felt like if somebody made a Turtles game and they had no prior experience. It was strange. I know that seems really harsh, but that's what it felt. Just like the movements and the control, everything felt very slideshowy. Like the graphics are nice and well drawn, but again, very bright. Like everything was super bright, unnecessarily so. But it's just so strange, having gone through all of these different ports at this point, how different they all are to each other. All of them are like missing elements from others. Some of them have different quirks to the others. None of them are quite... I mean, it's not like the NES version is a complicated game. Let's be honest.
It does feel like they've sat all the developers for all the different versions of the game in a room and gone, okay, here you go, play the NES version, and they've played it, and then they had to go back and create their own individual versions from memory.
Well, again, like like I said with the artwork for that Amiga version, it's like a 13-year-old's memory of what the game is,
what the Turtles
and then
look like.
They've had to draw it in Crayola. It's just it's weird that all of these games are trying to emulate what something else has done. None of them really succeeding. Some of them doing certain elements better than others. Others doing worse than other ones. None of them ever achieving exactly what that version did. And I know, obviously, that like the power of the consoles and computers and everything else is going to factor into it, and obviously the different development teams, but it's so odd that all of these versions exist, and they're all based on a game that doesn't really deserve so many different versions of it to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's they're striving for perfection, but the NES version wasn't perfection in the first place.
It's I mean, it's a game based on the back of a cartoon fad that doesn't even really match the cartoon fad it's trying to emulate. So it's again, we're back to this this deep frying copy of a copy of a copy where a game is based on something and doesn't really do a great job of doing that, and then other people are trying to copy the game and not doing a great. It's just bizarre.
I think when a game has to give Pizza Hut vouchers away with it to try and get you to buy it in the first place,
it doesn't help.
Says that it's not particularly great. Right, my hour 6. What do you think?
Go on then. I reckon you maybe got it this time.
10-hour time stamp.
End of hour 6 and I completed it. Yeah. So I completed it. The last getting to the boss took me my last couple of continues, and I literally took 1.5 characters. There's like a row of blue floaty men, which are a bit of a pain in the arse to kill. So I literally just played as Raphael, absolutely just ran through them, jumped through them, to the point where I'm about to die. And then I swap over to one of the others with a longer range attack to just get through the last kind of screen and a half. Then into the boss, which I can't tell who he's supposed to be. I don't know. What is it? It's certainly not. It doesn't look like Shredder. It doesn't look like Krang or anything like that. And then I just literally just ran up to him and just kept hitting him until my turtle was about to die. Then I swapped to the next one, kept hitting him until my turtle was about to die, switched to the next one, and I think I was like a bar off dying when I killed him. So yeah, so great. So second 10-hour timestamp in, and I've actually managed to complete one of the games, so that's good. And I've got, I think, 4 hours left. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to give, if I can get the Amiga version working, I'm going to try and get through the Amiga version. If I can't get the Amiga version working, because they can be a bit temperamental, I might give the Spectrum version a go. I'd go on the NES one, but that's, I mean, graphically and play-wise, it's quite similar to the Commodore version. So yeah, delighted. Yeah, really pleased. Was not expecting that, but that's about it. Bye.
10-hour time.
So firstly, yep, you were correct. My joy at the start was completely unnecessary given how easily you completed it.
And with no joy whatsoever.
I mean, considering how easy it is, like poking a toddler in the eye with a fork. But in my defence, my second hour was very, very glitchy, and I did have a couple of glitchy issues. He lies, but I mean, other than that, there's no way I'm getting away with my dignity intact with this. So out of 10, how embarrassed for me are you?
Well, it's and at least you completed it, and I was. To be honest, I think my statement of 5 hours in, if he hasn't completed it, what is he doing? At that point, I think I was just sick of looking at the same game through different filters. So it's just like, why has he not completed it yet? Because. The issue is, if every time you go in and start this game, you're doing the same areas over and over again, and it doesn't matter which version you're playing. those early segments are all still the same. So just going through that first sewer, killing off the things there, climbing out, killing Bebop or Rocksteady, whichever one it is, going up, going to the next sewer, going down there, and it's just it seems with all of them you roughly get about the same distance through before you lose that first continue.
That's
just, right. I don't know. It just starts to grate at a point.
If we were playing at the same time, what hints and tips would you have given me playing through the Commodore 64 version?
I would have probably suggested to avoid 90% of everything, not necessarily just in like going the correct route, but just the enemies and everything. Because I notice when a lot of people are playing these games that they're going toe to toe with enemies, you just end up taking damage most of the time. Your best bet is, if you can, jump over it, jump around it, because there is no benefit to killing anything. The only time you ever really need to do it is if it's an end of level boss section where you have to kill something in order to progress. And there's only 3, 4 of those throughout the entire game, so avoid what you can.
Well, it's good advice, and if you're listening at home and wants to play the Commodore 64 version, I would do that. I'd take Dave's advice.
You can't do that on the NES version, unfortunately, because, you can, kind of, but at least the attacking works a lot better on the NES version. It feels like it was the original, so you would expect it to. But yeah, something was lost in translation, certainly, on all of the ports. Okay, well, I think we have a contender for the worst version of this game now, and before I reveal what version it is, I'll just let you listen to it first. Those are the delightful sounds of the MS-DOS version. Good points first, the graphics are slightly better than the C64 port. That is all I have. The difficulty is probably the hardest yet. That comes from a mixture of things. The way it controls, which is probably the worst by far, and the fact that enemies are endless and absolutely fill the room. You can't seem to hit anything without being hit yourself. Enemies will literally spawn into the room on top of you, and there's nothing you can do about it. On the world map, the foot soldiers that pose practically no problems in any other version of the game will dive bomb you instantly. That includes those moments where you die and are put back onto the world map. It puts you on the world map, then it spawns multiple foot soldiers on top of you, meaning if you delay at all, you'll have lost 25 to 50% of your health before you even get into an actual level. I can barely get past Bebop right at the start of the game after multiple attempts. There are no continues here, again, and there's barely any chance of actually hitting him without taking a ton of damage. In the end, I could only get past him by standing still and mashing attack. If I was lucky, I would get through with a shred of health. Actually, no. If I was lucky, I wouldn't be in this situation to begin with. I wouldn't be sat here playing this. This is the equivalent of torture. I tried the EGA version, which is the one that had marginally better graphics in the C64 port, but prior to that I tried out the CGA version, and wow, what a horrific mess of reds, greys and purples. Half the time it felt like I was playing a corrupted Virtual Boy game. So, with that in mind, if you only have access to CGA graphics and you own this game, then congratulations, you have the ugliest, worst sounding and least playable version of a game that is already as fun as chewing tinfoil. I've got 3 hours left. I don't even know what to do with those 3 hours. Maybe I'll force myself to play the C64 version again. I honestly don't know.
So I looked at the CGA version and it was a horrendous muddy mess. It was so difficult to make anything. I mean, like you say, it's probably the worst version visually amongst all of them. It's horrendous looking. So bearing in mind that the Amiga and MS-DOS version had got game-breaking bugs, do you think this MS-DOS version was just broken full stop?
I genuinely don't know. I mean, I would rather play... I'd rather play the broken Amiga version than the MS-DOS version, knowing full well I could only get halfway through the game is probably actually a benefit. But if those were the only two versions on offer, my God, it was awful. I mean, when you consider nowadays, obviously it's PC Master Race and PC was the best. Back then, it wasn't necessarily the case. Consoles were obviously pushing a lot further ahead with games, and I mean, you heard that sound. What a horrendous noise that comes out of it.
There was obviously just one channel, and it was trying to do the sound effects and the music at the same time, and failing.
It kind of sounds like, when you walk into an arcade and you can hear all of the arcade machines at once.
Yes.
It was that, basically, but in one game, and none of the music was worth listening to. Speaking of the music in general, what is the deal with the music?
With the same thing over and over and over again. In the end, like after probably the first or second hour, I hooked my laptop up to the speakers that I was using, and I just got Spotify on. I was like, I am not listening to and it's like a whole Turtle theme tune for a start to kind of pick from, which they kind of hint towards in the overworld map. But then in the rest of it, it's like completely done away.
Well, it's just that kind of jolly overworld thing. Like you're going for a stroll, which, to be fair, all of the turtles are doing, because none of them have any movement speed whatsoever. But then it carries on playing in the Technodrome.
Yes, and then when the thing is it like just before like a new part loads, it goes quiet for a second. So when it got towards the game and I was coming into new sections, I kept waiting for I thought, okay, right, there must be a different song now. There must be a different and I was like, oh my God, really? Can we not have something else, something other than this horrible repeating?
I think there's like 2 tracks in the entire game, and I suppose with the MS-DOS version, at least, you don't get to hear 90% of it because it's too busy trying to do the sound effects as well.
It just sounds like Square Pusher over the top. It's like Square Pusher does Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles or whatever. Yeah, it does look pretty horrendous. But like you say, it's interesting that at that time when they were doing conversions to PC and stuff, like the CGI version is just looking absolutely horrible. Like, have you seen the version of RoboCop on MS-DOS?
Yes, and the Mega Man version is equally as...
Oh God, the Mega Man! Yes, absolutely terrible. It's so weird to think that they just hadn't cracked it at that time. Okay, then. Well, I've put my 7th and 8th hours together. Okay. The reason for that will become clear. So, I've been fairly calm with most of these, but I've just been playing through the Spectrum version. I'd watched the Cinevision video with all the different versions on, and I thought, oh crap, yeah, I remember Spectrum one. A friend of mine had it, and just for the nostalgia point of view, I thought, oh yeah, come on, give that a go. Well, I played it for an hour, and I keep getting to the water level and thinking, shit, this is really hard. Like everything's like my energy's going down really quickly. It all just doesn't seem quite right. Well, after an hour, I've just compared the version that I've been playing on the DS Lite, because I got a DS Lite and got a flash card for it, and I got a Spectrum emulator, and for some reason I was like, yeah, it'll be fine. It has been running at probably 5 times the speed it's supposed to run at, and the first time I got to the water level, I thought, what bugging me, you haven't got a great deal of time on this, the time kit's coming down really quickly. And then I thought, hang on a second, something's not right here. The energy's going down equally as quick. So I've just got a video up on YouTube of somebody playing it, and the speed difference is incredible. It's like I've wasted an hour playing this at 5 times the speed, wondering why it's absolutely destroying me compared to the fact that I completed on the C64, and I'm like, yay, I'll play it on the Spectrum.
What a waste of an hour. I mean, any normal person probably would have thought, oh, just check the speed as it is. But I thought, well, you know, these ports and things are all very different, aren't they? Well, the speed difference was ridiculous. So I'm very sorry if you're listening to this hoping for some exciting, scoopy, lovely stuff. You're not going to. I'm going to try it again on a different emulator, but I'll do it on the PC or something instead, because there's no speed settings on this particular emulator, but I don't want to now, so it can piss off and go and live in a hole. And the cat's meowing now because the cat's upset and your mum's upset, and I'll just throw loads of Chopper references in now just for the hell of it. Bit early for Kung Fu, isn't it? Right, okay, time to go. Bye.
10-hour time.
Okay, so spent around an hour on the Spectrum version of Turtles at the right speed this time. It's quite easy. Everything you can pretty much kill in one hit. It's quite a cut down version of the Commodore. You know, if the NES version is like an extended version of the Commodore version, then the Spectrum version feels like quite a cut down version. There aren't as many enemies where there were before, but then once you go on to the third stage, pretty different to the Commodore version. I mean, even the underwater level, some of the bombs that you've got to defuse are in different locations. There's something I really like about it. I like the graphic style. I like the big bouncing eyes. They're quite cool, and things going into flames when you hit them. And the jump when you go into the little rolled up ball to get over onto things works. I think works a lot better than the Commodore version, and it's useful for when Bebop and Rocksteady try and, when you get onto them as bosses, that you can actually kind of run away to be able to, then they'll follow you. So yeah, Spectrum version enjoyed. I think the Commodore one is definitely the most difficult one so far, and the Spectrum version, yeah, it's quite nice. Not too bad. I haven't decided what I'm going to do for the 10th hour yet. I know the Amiga and the PC versions I've been reading have both got bugs in them, so you can't actually complete them. I might try and track the Atari ST one down. It's something I've not emulated before, so that could be interesting.
Right. Two things. Well, the one thing that is very different to what you said. Obviously, I wasted an hour.
Yeah. I've wasted like 8 at this point, so.
So it's revenge, if anything. Yeah, but I was sat there going, bloody hell, this is fast. This is really fast. Anyway, I won't repeat myself, but it was a complete waste for an hour. You said, I didn't want to mention it at the time because I didn't want to spoil what I'd done, but you didn't like the fact that Bebop and Rocksteady chased you.
No, it's just like the floating through the sky nonsense.
I found it really useful because I didn't feel trapped in a little area, and that I could run, get a bit of distance on them, hit them, then run back, get a bit of distance on them and hit them, and I found that you could kill them a lot more easily that way, rather than being kind of stuck in one little area where they were even more difficult. I found running away quite useful.
I think the first one that you come across, which is Bebop, I think he tends to be the hardest because his pattern's not quite as obvious.
Yeah, he's definitely the hardest of the two.
But in terms of both Rocksteady and that Silver Turtle thing, whatever the hell that's meant to be, they both just seem to follow a set pattern over and over. So it's just a case of jumping behind them and poking them, and then jumping behind them and poking. I'm just doing that over and over again. Again, that's completely different on the NES version, but certainly on the C64 version, that's all you have to do. So when I came to the NES version, and Bebop is not particularly difficult on the C64 version, but he's certainly the hardest of them. He just seems to be like 10 times harder on the Spectrum version for me.
But I think he's one of the most difficult bosses one of the most difficult characters in the entire game.
Because I know Shredder tends to get himself stuck in a loop and just keeps him jumping into walls and stuff at the end of the game.
It's I don't. Well, we'll come on to the NES version because that's the version that I decide to play next. So we'll listen to my Ninth Hour, and then I've combined your 8th and 9th hours together.
Okay.
So here's my Ninth Hour on the NES.
10-hour time stamp.
Played it on the NES for an hour or so. It was okay. Very, very similar on all versions. The difference with the NES one is the attack is a lot better for you to be able to hit things above and below you, and there's a lot more range if you use Donatello or Leonardo. They're my preferences, really. It's pretty similar level layout. There is like little mini bosses kind of thrown in halfway through a lot of the levels, but they're not even mini bosses. They're just the screen just kind of clears out, and then the boss music comes on, and then it's just like a regular enemy from any point of the game. Additions are things like you can collect boomerangs and shurikens, ninja stars. Are they the same thing? Shuriken, and they're the same thing, and stuff like that. Otherwise, the game's pretty straightforward. I'm just bored of the game, really, to be honest with you. Doesn't matter what format it is, but because it's quite a small game, though it took me a long time it took me a while to play through. I imagine Dave probably did it in 20 minutes while asleep, while editing a video, while walking his dog. NES Nintendo version, good. Pretty much the same kind of thing, really. More of the same. Thanks.
10-hour time stamp.
Yes. So I think the long range attack and being able to use Donatello's bow. That's it. Yeah, not stick. That's very, very useful. Being able to do that like long. That's almost like a long distance, long range.
Yeah, well, Leonardo's attack. Even like he's got his vertical, which just tends to be good for hitting things that are inside a platform above him, because obviously that works.
Yeah.
But I mean, Michelangelo and Raphael, I think they can one hit more things because they've got a shorter range, so that there is more of a difference between them in the NES version, and there is a benefit to each of them, but all of that kind of balance washes out when you can just be Donatello and hit things from far away. Because if you can hit things and not get hit back by them, then that's obviously the one that you go for, because you need as much health as you can get.
And apparently playing as Michelangelo in the underwater level, apparently he's the best person for that. Oh, really? Because he doesn't move around quite so much, and so he's easier to manoeuvre.
I did not realise that.
Yeah, no, neither did I until afterwards.
I tended to use Raphael because he's the shittest, and I didn't care if he died.
Yeah.
I just when I did find out that you could change turtles at will, I should say, which by this point I was so fed up of trying all of the different versions, I forgot to even mention it in a diary entry. But yeah, I think I'd reread the manual, and the manual is a strange beast in itself, because it's a manual for literally every version.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring that up. That it literally covers every single version, and there's lots of little brackets like if you press Shift here, blah blah blah, Amiga and Atari ST versions only on the Commodore 64. Blah, blah, blah.
But it still lists all the power-ups, none of which you get in the C64 version. So you could be sat there having a poo, reading your C64 manual, and be like, "Oh, I'm looking forward to trying out all of these fancy weapons," and then. 2 hours later, you've completed the game and you haven't seen a single special weapon? Disgusting.
Yeah, I thought I did read through it, and it was like, oh, and I know it took me 5 hours, but I very much was like, hang on a sec, I sure remember them in the Nintendo version. But like in the Nintendo version, though, I can't understand why they have those pointless bosses.
Yes, they're just normal enemies, but with more health.
Yeah, it doesn't really make a great deal of sense, because it doesn't add very much to it.
No, it just kind of makes it a bit harder, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, have they got extra health?
Yeah, because they have a health bar at the bottom, and like all of the other standard enemies, just they don't. But yeah, when you start fighting them, they've probably got like maybe triple the amount of health of a standard version.
Right, okay, because Yeah, they've got like 1.5, 2, I think is like the highest that I saw. But I wasn't sure if that was just the equivalent to what their normal hit rates would have been had they got.
It definitely felt like I didn't measure it, so to speak, but it definitely felt like they were taking more to actually take out. Because it tends to be the chainsaw guys, or the flame guys, or the sand men. Those are the like mini bosses that you end up fighting, but it's constant. So at the end of every section, just before you go up a ladder, you've got to wipe out all of the enemies on the screen, and then they'll spawn in, sometimes on top of you, because that's always handy. And then you've got to fight them, which just means like you're just losing, you're just pissing health constantly in the NES version. But it's kind of counterbalanced by the fact that it does play better, and you've also got the special weapons which you can use to attack things from afar, which you don't have any of those options available to you in the C64 version.
So having played the Spectrum, Commodore, Amiga versions, how do you think the NES stacks up in compared to those ones?
Well, I mean, like, it sounds mad at saying that. I think that the NES version is a lot better than all of them, but that doesn't elevate it to any more than still just a mediocre game. And it also doesn't mean that they are like way down, like they're like 1s out of 10s. They're all like, for the most part, all of them, certainly for the time they would have come out and for the computers they came out on, would have been below average to average at best. But I guess if you're comparing them all like on a straight line, then I still think that the NES version is average, and all of the ports are just worse versions of the NES version.
It's like asking which is your favourite paranormal activity.
Essentially that, yeah. But not even that. It's like, it's almost like, I don't know, you've got like the Transformers films, and then you've got sci-fi's Transmorphers, and it's like, which Transmorphers is your favourite?
Okay, well, I've combined your 8th and 9th hours, so let's have a listen.
I read a comment online that said that the American version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the C64, i.e. not the Hero Turtles one that I've been playing, is a harder and better game. I read that in a YouTube comment, so I have no idea if it was bollocks or not. I found a copy of what purported to be a TMNT, and sure enough, it came on 2 disc images just like they'd said. It even had a little thing at the start of the game to say that this was the American version, now available for us dejected Europeans to play. Could this be better than Hero Turtles for the C64? No, I could find absolutely no discernible difference. I don't know if they're lying on the intro, or the YouTube comment was lying, or it's the fact that I just avoid 90% of the game world where I can and head directly to where I need to go each time. But I played through it to completion again, and there was nothing. Nothing. The key word to describe exactly how I feel right now. I played the C64 version a bit more and got absolutely nothing new out of it, so I thought, screw it. I'll let my daughter play for the rest of the hour. Let's see what she thinks.
When is it gonna load?
Well, that's the first thing. So this game, as I say, came out in 1990. This is how long you had to wait for games to load up at the time.
I'm getting bored.
5 minutes later.
What do you think this is?
Password.
Yeah, why does it have a password?
So you don't hack.
So you don't hack it? Kind of, yeah, that's sort of right. So basically, in the old days, it used to be very, very easy for people to steal games. So you had to use something like this. So what do you reckon the code is that you have to put in there?
Enter password from code tablet for mission E15. 15. Then what?
And then what else?
I don't know.
You've got that bit right.
E.
Yeah, so where would it be?
1, 2, 0, 2.
Yeah, well done. Let's take 1202. More loading! It's fun, this game, isn't it?
No.
Approximately 10 hours later.
So what did you think of the game overall?
Stupid.
What did you think of the music?
It's not the best.
The graphics?
Terrible.
Terrible. What was terrible about them?
Because it's glitchy on the loading and when you move it, I don't like it.
No, it feels horrible, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Would you say it's the worst game you've ever played?
No.
What's the worst game you've ever played?
That.
So it's not the worst game you've ever played, but it is the worst game you've ever played?
Yeah.
Oh, you changed your opinion in the matter of a few minutes?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
I mean, it's fair to say that your 8th hour was a complete waste of time. You were expecting something genuinely magical from the American version that was not any different.
So what I'd been reading was that the American version, they had added back in Mouser and the Technodrome, and I think it was just a YouTube comment or something that I read. Maybe it was something on Moby Games, I can't remember, but I don't know if they were hidden away somewhere for some reason, but they certainly weren't in when I played it. But it did say right at the start, when I loaded it up, it was the disc version, it loaded it up and it said, finally the American version is available in Europe, blah, 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 blah. It seemed exactly the same to me, so that was just basically me playing through the same thing I've been playing through again and getting nothing extra of it.
Was the intro actually part of the original game, or was it whoever's cracked it?
I think it was a cracker that had put that at the start. From what I remember, it seemed to have a lot of bouncing text, so I presume it was them.
Probably the highlight of my editing session has been listening to your daughter talk about the game itself. Yes. That was a nice little treat, and that you were. It seemed to be that you were deliberately sitting through the loading screens and the code screen, so you could do like a "You Don't Know You're Born" Monty Python kind of sketch.
I wanted to see how she would cope with just the length of because there is a lot of loading in this game, an inordinate amount, and it's not just at the start; it's just constant throughout the game.
It's constant, yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll put her in front of it, and we'll get to that because I knew the code screen would come up, and she would think it was about to start. Get her to do that, and then it would go straight into more loading, and just.
And then she did a Marge Simpson grumble.
Just went, and then when she was playing it, I mean, you said before, like if you were to give any tips to people on what to do when they're playing this game, what would you tell them to do? It's pretty much exactly what I was telling my daughter to do, and she didn't listen to a single bloody word I said. She kept on running to the left. She was hitting everything that was going on. I was like, "You're gonna get nowhere. You're not playing it correctly."
You're playing Turtles wrong.
She got as far as Bebop, I think. She had no idea who Bebop or Rocksteady or April O'Neil or probably even who the Turtles are. Let's be honest. She had a couple of goes at it, and then she just didn't want to speak to me for the rest of the day. So I recorded that bit at the end with her. I mean, to be fair, like in terms of the games that she plays, she didn't play it an awful lot. It just tends to be like Roblox and standard kid stuff. So she's not played a great deal. Although she absolutely loves like beat 'em ups like Street Fighter, etc. I think just because you can just play together and hammer away, it doesn't particularly matter about skill. And I always beat her because I'm a lot better.
She finished Alien Soldier.
Yes, she finished Alien Soldier in her second hour.
And she finished this in her first hour. I mean, she wasn't wrong. It was stupid and terrible.
Yes,
and not very good.
And the music isn't the worst thing she's ever heard. It's just bad.
Oh, well, you can't blame her. Really. Did you have any influence on her 180 about it being the worst game?
No, that was literally. The only thing I cut out was the silence because I said, "Is it the worst game you've ever played?" She said no, and I said, "What game is?" And she went, that.
So I just cut out the long pause while she tried to think of any other game she could put in its place, and then she realised that actually no, this is probably the worst.
Actually, no, probably is the worst thing she's ever played. I play the Atari ST version now for my my final hour. Let's hear how I got on.
Hour 10. After a little bit of to and fro, I managed to get it working on an Atari ST emulator, the Atari ST version. Obviously, looks very nice. It plays very similarly to the NES version. You've got the full array of moves. You've got the ninja stars, you've got all that kind of stuff. But then you've got these very home computer bright graphics, which are really nice. The level layouts, it's a little bit of a mixture of the 8-bit computers and the Nintendo version. So some of it, like, they've put no thought into it at all. Like, there's a slice of pizza, and then literally a second later there's a full pizza, which makes no sense at all. Bebop and Rocksteady are a lot easier in this. They actually back off when you hit them, so they're a bit easier to kill. The mini bosses on this are unlike the Nintendo version, whereas on the Nintendo version they'll usually have like 1.5 to energy things, whereas on this they've got like full energy, much like Bebop and Rocksteady. Bebop, not Bob, fuck's sake. Bebop and Foxsteady. So it's all right. I wouldn't say it was the best of both worlds, but it's quite nice. The character sprites seem slightly too small for what's going on. It's very, very easy. It's probably the easiest one. So yeah, I've enjoyed it.
I don't mean to keep banging on about how easy things are.
What would you know?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, graphically, it's very, very similar to the Amiga version. I mean, unsurprisingly, they're very similar. But yeah, the sprites seemed ever so slightly out of proportion. They seemed like a bit too small for the actual level layout. And like you've mentioned before, the 16-bit versions have got the additional bosses. What did you say? A mouser?
Yes.
Because I've put here huge robot duck that fires lasers from his butt. Because they've got the little mousers, haven't they? And then there's the big one. And the slightly smaller, shitty version of the Thunderdome that's basically a tank with an eye on the top.
Is it supposed to be the actual Thunderdome?
Well, that's what I wasn't sure of, because it does. I can't understand why you would have the eye on the top like the Thunderdome, unless it was supposed to be the Thunderdome. But the actual Thunderdome is a big, massive round thing.
Because, let's be honest, what they must have done is make a proportionally sized remote control version of the Thunderdome to send out to attack you first. But why would they go to such an effort? That's what I don't understand.
Just make it look like a tank or something. There's no need. There's definitely no need for the eye on the top. But at least Shredder looks like Shredder in this version. Not that I got that far. I watched a video of somebody playing it, but I just did the hour on this one and just went, oh, there we go. That's very nice. But yeah, I quite like the kind of 16-bit computer bright colour things. I mean, it reminds me of like games like Bart versus the Space Mutants, and playing those things on the Amiga when my friend had one. So I quite like those big bright sprites, but I suppose in comparison to the other versions and the fact that it's supposed to be quite a grimy game, I suppose, apart from on the overworld levels, it does kind of detract from that a little bit. But yeah, so the Atari one, okay. It sounds like we've got similar thoughts to your version of the playing through the Amiga version.
Yeah, I mean they're all much of a muchness, really, aren't they? They're all just kind of wonky versions of a wonky game.
Wonky. Right, okie dokie, on to your 10th hour.
Final hour, my mind hasn't changed, unsurprisingly. I split this hour in two. Half of it I played the original NES version and half of it the C64 port. And what I will say is that I do now have a newer appreciation of the NES version. I was never a huge fan of the game, and seeing just how poor the C64 version is, it's put the NES version in a new light. Not an immediately bright, sparkling light, more like a broken fluorescent bulb, but I can definitely appreciate the original more. I still, at the end of all this, feel as though the game was an overhyped, generic platform beat-em-up with uninspired level design, and that you could paste pretty much any theme over the top of it and have it be exactly the same game. It feels like they pulled a Super Mario Bros. 2 on us and took an already developed game and just did a sprite swap. But to the C64 port in question, all I can say is...
10 hour time down.
So, big fan of the game then, Dave?
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious. Pretty obvious at this point.
Pretty obvious to this point, after playing 74 million versions. I did have a look around to see if there was anything in regards to it being a sprite swap. But especially as like we were saying earlier about how the level enemies, majority absolutely nothing to do with the turtle show itself.
Yeah, I've not seen anything about it being a sprite swap, but it genuinely feels like a game that they, possibly not a sprite swap is probably the wrong word, but perhaps a game that was already in development and then they just
like repurpose.
Yeah, they just happened to get the license and were like, we'll just do it with that game about nothing. Let's put the Turtles theme on top of that.
You said kind of near at the start it reminded you of a crap Ninja Gaiden. As you played through, did it conjure up any memories of any other games?
No, because certainly at the time it came out, in that. Well, if we're talking just directly of the NES, where it came from, there was a lot of games on the NES that were like that, where they kind of taken like an arcade approach, and obviously they,
like Batman.
Yeah, well, they couldn't do necessarily arcade games, but they had to do an arcade style game, make it difficult, slap it on the NES. The only other game I could think of actually was the second Legend of Zelda, and that's just because of the overworld map followed by the side-scrolling sections. But it plays nothing like it. I would certainly rather play through Zelda 2 again over this. On any, whether it's on the NES or or any of the ports, but my opinion going into it was, okay, I think it's a 5 out of 10 game, but I'll give it a benefit of the doubt, and I came out thinking, okay, it's a 5 out of 10 game. But all of the ports are worse, and it makes that 5 out of 10 actually seem like a shining diamond in the middle of the score meter.
Yeah, it probably wasn't the greatest idea of mine, but at least it could have been worse. It could have been a game where there was that was literally the only version, and there was no other ports for you to play through, and you had to find 8 hours of how to play through.
I mean, it's interesting to have gone through it anyway, because there's not a chance. I mean, if I was ever going to go back and play this game without you having brought it up, I would have just gone back to the NES version. I would have never tried any of those ports out. So it's been interesting to see the breadth of versions that a game could produce back then, or just on the back of one game being successful. The amount of ports this game got, undeservedly, I will say, but the amount of versions of this one game, all of them play completely differently, to the point where it's one of these things of, when is the game not the same game anymore? If you keep replacing certain parts and changing other parts, when does it become a different game? that's where this is all kind of led to for me. It's been an interesting look at all of these different versions, even if I have not enjoyed a single minute of it.
Well, I did look at the Game Boy version, and it wasn't the same
It's a totally
game.
different game.
But there are an awful lot of Turtle games on the 8-bit systems, and I think you've talked about it on one of your videos before about the C64 version of the arcade game.
Yes. Well, no, I haven't. I did do a stream on the Spectrum version of that arcade game, but I covered the Simpsons C64 game, which is kind of...
yes, it was the Simpsons C64 one you talked about.
But no, I've not tried that. But they did a really good job of porting that arcade game across, which makes me wonder, why didn't they just do that instead of this?
Yeah, well, just draw a line under the NES version and just do the arcade.
Yeah, I know. Like the sequels on the NES did go down that arcade route because they obviously realised, oh shit, that's a lot better than what we've done. So they did go down that route from that point on. They realised that this weird half platform, half explorer, pointless world wasn't the best method to go for, but it's an interesting part of gaming history, I suppose.
It served its purpose.
Yes.
Now, 11th Hour. So this month it was your turn to write the 11th Hour jingle.
Write the theme tune, sing the theme tune. Before
we do, should we make our predictions?
Yes.
Do you think I played beyond the 10th hour?
Slapping that in. Are we just talking about the C64 version here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. I mean, it's blatantly obvious to anybody. I could have called it at the second hour that you would not go past the 10th hour. So, Dave, let's hear your jingle.
Eleventh Hour.
Well, that was tremendous. It was good. I enjoyed that. That was really good.
My first foray into Fruity Loops.
It's really good. I kept it. I thought it was going to go.
Yeah, it had a bit of that. I thought, well, I'll put some drums in, and then I got to the bass, and I was like, oh, this bass loop works alright. And then I got to the melody, and I was like, So just sprinkled some melody in there.
Well, it sounded great. It was thumping.
It was beautiful, wasn't it?
Did you go on? Did you go on beyond the 10th hour?
No.
Okay.
But with the if we're going to add the NES version into it, I will say that it's just one of those games that I probably will end up just picking up every now and then, just see how far I get with the NES version. Even though it's weird, it's not like I've got no desire to. It's just a game that seems to be like such a commonality in retro game, and then it's like, yeah, I'll try it again. Maybe I was harsh on it.
Maybe I was wrong the first 10 hours.
So yeah, the C64 version, no. I have no desire, nor reason or inclination to go back to it. But yeah, the NES version, I can't say that I particularly want to, but I probably would end up playing it again at some point. What about you?
I probably won't ever play the C64 version again. The only one that appeals to me to go back to is the Spectrum version, and that's purely, I think, from a nostalgia point of view, because I like the graphical style of it, and it does make me kind of go, oh, I remember this. But it would literally be a case of I would fire the emulator up, play through like the first 10 minutes, and then go, yeah, I'm done with that now. Probably won't touch that.
And
again.
that's pretty much what everyone does with just the Turtles games in general, I think.
Yeah, well, the arcade game I do fire up and play for like a little bit, but then I'm like, oh, okay.
So you ended our last podcast with some lovely words about Alien Soldier. You summed up your thoughts, what you liked, disliked about it, how it made you feel inside, how it resonated with you, how it quickly made it onto your favourite Mega Drive games list, and spawned a romance as old as time. I had written a heartfelt final piece on my love for the C64. It was my introduction to gaming. It was my first love. And, I have it to thank for making me the gamer I am today. But we all know what a massive load of bollocks that would be. Quite frankly, I'm ashamed of myself. And if anything, I'll be lucky if Dave wants to do a third episode. So I'll just say this. Do not waste your bloody time on any version of this game. Go and play the arcade version or any of its console ports and their sequels. The majority of those are really good, like Turtles in Time. That's good indeed. Was Turtles in Time, was that the SNES one and then the Mega Drive?
Yes, Turtles in Time came out in the arcade as well, I believe. There was Hyperstone Heist on the Mega Drive. Pretty much the original arcade, Turtles in Time, Hyperstone Heist, even Turtles Tournament Fighter over this. There are a multitude of good Turtles games out there. None of them are this one.
Yeah, even the Xbox 360 one. That's quite nice. The cell shaded one.
Yeah, I've not tried that.
It's just a bit of a beat 'em up. It's quite good fun. That's not too bad. On that note, I shall say goodbye. Thank you for being here, Dave. It's been a pleasure as usual.
Thanks.
And we will see you next month. Goodbye.
Bye.
Since we recorded this episode, we've decided on a format change. 1. Person A will pick 3 games for Person B to choose from. 2. Person B will pick a game and do the 10 diary entries. 3. Person A will also be playing the game for the same amount of time, but will be responding to the diary entries from Person A. This opens us up to games that one person may be familiar with that the other isn't, and it means episodes are shorter and will reduce the amount of doubled information, as well as plenty of other benefits. Episodes therefore should flow far better, and that's only a good thing. For the next episode, Stu has chosen Metroid Zero Mission on the Game Boy Advance from a list provided by Dave. Thank you for listening, puny humans. When the synthesis happens, your lives will be spared.
Time.